Welcome, my beloved soul seekers. This is Julie, and I'm so happy to have you here today on the Youest. This day is such a joy and honor for me. I have been so excited and anticipating having just this amazing woman you're going to get to know and love, Regena Thomashauer, otherwise known as Mama Gena, who has been a massive inspiration and mentor and guide for me and to me. And so I'm so excited to introduce you to Mama Gena. She is the teacher and best-selling author, mother, and media personality and founder and CEO of the School of Womanly Arts, which began in her living room in 1998 and has since grown into a global movement. She believes that women are the greatest untapped natural resource on the planet. We are going to get into that, by the way. And that as people of all genders reclaim the magnificence of the feminine, the patriarchy will fall, liberating all of us. Thomashauer's approach stems from decades of research in the social, cultural, and economic history of women. Her distinctive style, at once irreverent, unwavering, affirming, and swear-y, has engaged thousands from all over the world. And I am warning you now, there will be some swearing and some words, so you might want to put some, headphones on. In addition to leading the School of Womanly Arts, Regena has authored 4 popular books, including her newest New York Times bestseller, Pussy, a Reclamation, and has been featured widely as a leading expert in modern feminism. She lives and works in New York City, and you can find all about Mama Gena at mamagenas.com. All of this will be in the show notes. But honestly, enough for me. I just want to welcome you. I'm so honored to have you.
I'm so excited to be here, Julie. I love it. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, thank you for being here. I am like, where do we begin? Because I'll tell you, I was at your School of Womanly Arts. You did an amazing weekend in New York. I was blown away. I had read your book, Pussy, a Reclamation, and honestly, there was like a transformation that happened. And I'd love to start, I think, just really getting into your belief. And I agree as well about women being the most untapped natural resource on the planet, and like what you mean about that. And I think it's a good place to start.
Let's begin at the beginning.
Yeah.
Women in this culture haven't really been taught to really be connected to the privilege of what it means to be a woman. We're taught to take care of our families, our bosses, our girlfriends, our lovers, our husbands, our kids, but nobody teaches a woman or encourages a woman to pay attention to what lights her up, what brings her joy, what pleasures her, what she most longs for, what she desires, and perhaps most importantly, how to connect and own her sensual power. Because a woman it kind of breaks out like this, Julie. A woman who owns her pussy owns her life. And a woman who doesn't. And it's just like that. And it's an area, first of all, I'm aware that even using that word pussy is very provocative and highly offensive. It's at the same time, it's a wake-up call and meant to provoke an awareness of how much of the education of the feminine has been dropped out for thousands and thousands of years. So my work for the past 21 years has been an effort to connect a woman to her life force, to connect a woman to her desire, to connect a woman to her voice, her power, her confidence, her sense of her own magnificence, her turn on. Why? Because the world is hungry for the voice of woman. And no matter how many degrees you have, or what kind of, CEO you are, or how accomplished you get in your career, or there is no way that a woman can truly power up without connecting to her life force, her pleasure, her pussy. That's a woman connecting to her divinity.
Mm.
And it's a whole other way of life, which is worthy of pursuit. Especially now, we've come to the sort of bitter end of what the patriarchal world culture can provide. And now it's time to open a new doorway and a new chapter, and for a woman to begin to source herself from a more feminine aspect of who and what she is.
Mm. I love what you said about this kind of like this call to action for women to really to own it, and that we weren't taught to do this, but you can, this is something that we're craving that's been missing. I have so many questions, but I think the first one is kind of, the word pussy. Like, let's be honest, there are people listening that are like, she said what?
Yeah.
What? And I remember from your book, one of the things I love about you, I love words as well. I don't think I'm as studied, but you love language and words. I remember you went into, oh my gosh, you did a beautiful job explaining so much about the feminine and, before the patriarchy, but getting to pussy and why that word. I know you chose it, for a reason. And I think it's important so we can get comfortable to use it and why you use it.
Well, let's say anybody who's listening to this podcast right now, what were you taught to call your bits and pieces when you were growing up?
Yeah.
I will always ask this question when I'm delivering events to, 1,000 women, 5,000 women. I'll say, what was the terminology? And women will come at me with, if there's 1,000 women in the room, I will have at least 900 different names for a woman, that which is most essentially feminine. So women were taught to call, a pee-pee, a front bottom, a knish, a hoochie, a Walter Winchell, my purse, my, my, it just, I'm blocking the thousands and thousands of names that women have told me over the years that their bits and pieces are called. And why this is significant, bear with me for a moment. When I teach, I have a men's workshop that I deliver. And when I have the same sea of men, I'll say, what were your parts called? And they'll say, penis. What's your problem? And there is a huge differential in that. If a little girl is not even given the terminology or the name for that which is most essentially feminine, and her source of feminine power, the creation of life, is in the female body. When we aren't even given a name, in Jesus said, in the beginning there was the Word. There is no beginning if there is no word. And so what happens is, if there's no language, what replaces the lack of language is shame. And a little girl will know, oh, wow, that isn't called anything. I'm going to be ashamed of that. And as soon as there's shame, there's disconnection. And when there's disconnection, there's powerlessness. And when a woman isn't owning her power, what that means is someone else is. And thus, we find the hashtag Me Too movement, where we have a whole culture of women who are first acknowledging, for the first time in hundreds and hundreds of years, they're acknowledging the abuse that the majority of women have experienced, sexual abuse or physical abuse, where a woman, because she doesn't own her power, she believes she has to bow to someone else's point of view about how her body could and should be engaged with, rather than resorting to her own certainty, her own truth. So it's key. It's hugely important for a woman for a little girl to begin to know. Of course, when my daughter was little, she was taught that the terminology was vulva, because that's actually the correct term for the exterior genitalia. I always get many gynecologists or daughters of gynecologists that say, oh, I grew up calling it a vagina, Mama Gena. Like, that's the correct terminology. And I'm like, no, sorry. But the vagina is the interior. You can't see a vagina except with the speculum.
Mm.
It's the exterior genitalia, which is the vulva, which includes the clitoris, the outer lips, and the inner lips. It would be the exact same thing as if you told a little boy that his penis was called a scrotum. There's just no reason to misname
Yeah.
a significant body part of the human body, except if the purpose was to disempower
Yeah.
many generations of women, and indeed that's what has happened.
Mm.
So I chose the word pussy because when a woman says pussy, it makes her smile. It makes her laugh. And she doesn't laugh when she says vulva. She
Right.
just is like vulva, sort of sounds like a very
Vulva.
safe car,
Yeah.
but pussy, it brings some delight to a woman. So that's my choice.
Oh my gosh. I love it. I love you just for you stepping out. I know you did this in a time, this is now, we have the Me Too movement, but you did this in a time when I don't think people were speaking about this so much.
Oh
And
my goodness. It was the scariest thing when
yes,
I knew I had to write this book. And I was like, it was just like plugging me in. Like, I was like, oh my God, and I have to call it pussy. And what am I going to do? I'm how terrifying, and I have a friend of mine. She lived not far away from me. Um, she's she's really one of my best friends, an amazing marketer. Her name is Marie Forleo.
oh,
So
I love Marie. She's been
I,
on here.
I called her up and I'm like, Marie, I think I have to call this book Pussy. And she's like, get over here. We're going to muscle test it right now. So I jumped in my car, drove over to her house, and she's like, oh, okay. So we muscle tested it with like holding a piece of paper which had the title of the book in one hand. And then we just muscle tested like 5 different times. She's like, girl, sorry. Gonna have to call it Pussy. That's just it. It's moments like that where you need a girlfriend to
Yeah.
just like, as you're jumping off the deep dive, for her just to say, you got to do it. You have to listen to that inner truth. You got to do it. And then incredibly, that was the book that made it to the New York Times bestseller list, which has been a dream of mine to achieve that and to get the title Pussy on
Yeah.
the New York Times bestseller list. I felt like, oh, this is honoring a piece of the feminine that has not been honored in thousands and thousands of years. This is a really good thing.
Amazing. I really salute you because I was like, this had to have taken some
Oh,
shit ton of courage for you to
shit
do that.
ton, shit
Yeah.
ton. And everybody told me, don't do it. Do not do it. Do not do it. But Hay House, which is my publisher,
Yeah.
they were game. They were game
Mhm.
right away, that was really, that was awesome. Really made me fall in love with them.
Such a gift. Regina, I feel like I'm calling you Regina, Mama Gena. I hope you don't mind. You
They're
probably
all good.
okay.
I answer to
Mama
everything.
G, Mama Pussy. I know your story. Well, I know your story because I've, listened to Pussy a few times. By the way, everyone I've shared it with is like touched, moved, inspired,
Aw.
transformed. I mean, really.
That's the power of Pussy.
Yeah, it's,
That's the power of when a woman connects,
yes.
even on the printed page, and suddenly it connects these dots inside of a woman that have been longing
Mm,
for connection, and women's lives change.
yeah,
It's a change that is essential right now because we really require the voice of the feminine. And when she connects with her pussy, she is loud and proud and has an innate confidence that perhaps she didn't even have the day before. It can happen that quickly.
yeah.
But you wanted to talk about my story somehow. I don't want to
Well,
take you off the track.
no, we're going to come back because I can hear people like, how do you connect to your pussy? And I also struggle a lot, and I'm assuming others, you might have as well. Maybe before we get to the story, this voice of, who does she think she is? like, both internally, and we
Yeah.
hear that. I'm curious if you felt that before and how you've moved through that voice. Cause that, I think that that can stop a lot of women in their
Yeah.
tracks a lot.
Yeah. I think that we do have a crisis of confidence amongst women right now, where there's an epidemic of self doubt, self hatred, self deprecation, where a woman can get stuck thinking um, she's too old, she hasn't studied enough, she isn't experienced enough, and she'll kind of keep, even though she has a passion, she'll kind of keep a lid on the incredible bottle of champagne she is, instead of uncorking it and exploding it all over the world with its effervescence.
Mm,
And you know, the media, a woman's disconnection from her power source, all these things contribute to this epidemic of self doubt and self hatred. And the object with my work is to actually create an epidemic
mm,
of self love and turned on women and women celebrating women. And when a woman connects to her pussy and to her life force, she realizes there's no scarcity in the world, that
yes.
we're all sisters. There's more than enough for all of us. And it's so easy to uplift other women when you're not feeling that sense of scarcity, or as if you don't have enough, or
Mm,
you can't, or you won't. And so many women who've read my book or taken my classes have connected to that gorgeous life force that's inside all of us, and have been willing to take steps in terms of writing a book they've been longing to write, or starting a business, or venturing into the world of online dating, which can be terrifying as fuck, or choosing to ask for that raise that they so need or deserve, or inviting their partner to participate more in child rearing, and beginning to balance the scales of their life, because they start to feel better and better and better, and more confident about their voice. But it is truly impossible for a woman to speak up
yeah.
unless she's connected to her power source, because her power source,
Mm,
it's not just her, it connects her to the source energy, to her divinity, to that divine feminine flow that, that's the birthright of every single woman.
I love that. Oh, it's beautiful. No, I couldn't, I want to get into it, but I do want to ask you, because I know that, you grew up not always connected to this flow and this source. I mean, you share very openly about your, childhood with your brother, the abuse. I mean, I'm assuming
Hmm.
you're out and open about it because it's in the book, and just I can only imagine what you've had to move through, and maybe
Yeah.
just to share a little bit. I think it's important because people can see, like, Mama Gena, and look at all these amazing, like, what you're doing, which is a gift to the world. And I think it's helpful for those to just remember that there was a place you started and healed.
Yeah. Well, there's always a moment when I teach where I'll say, anybody who was physically abused, sexually abused, verbally abused, in some way violenced or objectified
Yeah.
in their growing up years, please stand.
Hmm.
Because it's a place where women feel very isolated. We feel like we're the only one, and there's so much shame, which leads to more isolation. And we don't want to communicate about it or talk about it because we feel so
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah.
And always about 95% of women rise to their feet. And it's my conviction that the other 5% just forgot.
Yeah.
Or it's experience that's not uncommon. And so I wanted to write about my past and the experience of abuse that I had really from the time I was an infant, um, because it was home. It's that's what home was for me. So I didn't have value judgment about the experience. The only thing I knew was that I felt broken.
Mm.
I felt like I had no right to, I began wanting to be an actress, that, but I never felt confident about who I was as a woman, or I
Mm.
was too scared to go to auditions. I didn't know how to get straight with myself. And so I did, all the things that people do, therapy, different classes. I ended up, I'm a researcher. So I thought, I saw it wasn't just me. All of my friends that I went to college with, my girlfriends, each were finding their own crisis of confidence. A friend couldn't ask for payment for her artwork
Mm.
because she didn't feel worthy. She just felt like it was a privilege to paint the paintings, or another friend, instead of pursuing her dream, ended up working for her family business, or another friend kept getting degree after degree after degree and still not feeling like she was where she needed to be. And I saw that this was an issue for women. And I thought there had to have been, has this always been the way? So I ended up studying the ancient goddess traditions and the uh, uh, ancient goddess cultures, because I wanted to understand, was the world different when the feminine was worshipped alongside the masculine? And indeed it was. It's a whole different paradigm. And I had a remarkable education, but it wasn't until I connected with my pussy that I connected with my life force and my power and my confidence. And the most shy, um, filled with depression and doubt young woman that I was able to, like, write a book called Pussy and teach seminars for thousands and thousands of women. Because once I learned the power of pleasure and how essential it was for a woman to own her sexual truth and brilliance, I wanted to tell every woman, because I was like, if it could change my life, the most desperate person on earth, it will change every woman's life. And so I think my mission was very profound, and especially after I gave birth to my daughter Maggie,
Mm.
because I thought, I need to make sure that the world is ready to handle who and what a woman is. And so I've got to be able to teach women who they are, because then they'll be able to handle the world. So it was really Maggie that had me feel strong enough to start the school. I think sometimes babies kind of deepen our connection to ourself, and they bring a tremendous amount of um, my um, my grandmother used to say that babies bring luck,
Mm.
um, and they bring opportunity. For me, it grounded me in who I was in my lineage, and what the debt of gratitude I felt to my ancestors, and the responsibility I felt to the girls of today who will be the women of tomorrow, and wanting to do my part
Mm.
to open that channel of
Mm.
beauty and radiance for every woman.
Amazing. I'm remembering one of the stories. I love this story. I'm thinking how important, what a lesson it is. One of the stories where you got the you went to the department store as you were starting your
Oh
school
God.
in the brownstone. I feel like I was with you. I'm like, I felt literally, you write so beautifully. I was like, I thought when I was with her. Got this very expensive dress that you wore for the portrait, and
Oh
just
my God.
stepping into this
Yeah.
aspect of who you were becoming. That's very powerful what you did.
Yeah. Uh, you know, it was easier for me to kind of create. I'm naturally very shy and introverted. Um, but it's not something that anybody really believes once they've seen me on stage.
Right.
So,
I'm like, I don't think so.
but I knew that if I was going to be talking about pussy and educating people about sex and sensuality, I would need a persona.
Yeah.
to step into, like something bigger than me, because I was way too introverted to handle taking on the culture in that way. And so I had just had my daughter Maggie, and I wrote the curriculum for the very first School of Womanly Arts course. And I had like 10 women who were in the class. And so I thought, I know, I will be Mama Gena, and this will be the School of Womanly Arts. And I didn't think it was going to stick, because at that time I was writing course after course after course after course after course, and wasn't really attached to any of them. But then what happened was, um, there was some celebrity that was taking my class that ended up talking about my class, and then Alex Witchell from the New York Times came and wrote a profile on me, and she sat in on a Mama Gena class. And then the next day I got like 10 book offers. And so suddenly I was Mama Gena. It's like, thank God I created the persona. So I was ready for when everything happened. But I didn't know who she was at the beginning. You know, when you first decide, like, okay, I'm going to create a revolution. I'm going to create a movement. I'm going to start a pleasure revolution. You know, you don't really know what to wear. uh, and so, or how to behave. And I didn't have any money in those days. So a friend of mine took me shopping. I don't know what she was thinking, but she took me to Bergdorf's, which is kind of like, it's like insane. First of all, it's so gorgeous there.
Yeah.
That I was transported. But then, and I didn't even think to look at the price tags. I'd never spent more than probably $90 on a dress in my life. And she pulled this Mary McFadden beaded gown and put this thing on me. And I saw Mama Gena for the first time.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, there she is.
Mm.
And it's those little glimpses of a truth that are so much bigger than a price tag.
Yeah.
And they must be followed, even when it makes no linear sense or rational sense.
Yeah. I love you sharing that. I'm thinking for those listening that have had glimpses of their desires, to take that and make it your own. How could you step into, maybe you go and get a dress and look at yourself, or just, I loved that story, because you really became that. You moved into that.
Yeah, it's in the beginning, we kind of have to trick ourselves into our greatness.
Yeah.
Because what we're accustomed to is diminishing ourselves,
Yes.
putting ourselves down, making ourselves smaller, holding back our truth, disconnecting from our voice. And so anything that gives you the tiniest bit of confidence. I remember it was really popular to, do you remember that Wonder Woman stand? We were all supposed to stand like Wonder Woman.
Oh, yeah.
And feel powerful, you know, that's helpful.
Yeah.
It's helpful to do that, you know, or just small things that can remind a woman of her greatness are of inestimable value. I have a student right now, every weekend she goes and she test drives a Rolls Royce. Because they let you. Yeah. They give you a glass of champagne, and she knows that if she keeps going there, that there will be a day and there will be a way that she will step into that. Yeah. And she wants to be like, you know, this a voice for women of color who are unbelievably successful, powerful entrepreneurs. And so she is just, that's what she does. And I found that so inspiring. Like, how many times do we hold ourselves back from going over the top, when it's actually over the top that's going to heal and going to not only shed light just for ourselves, but for others. So over the top is always a really clever place to go. And in this particular case, it's free to test drive a Rolls Royce.
Like,
I ended up buying the dress on about 4 different credit cards, and a lot of stacks of quarters, and took me many years to pay that shit off. But damn, it was the best investment of my life. One of them.
amazing. I love that story. And I just, the really for women listening to just, you created that persona. I mean, you introvert, it's like, what? I was with you the 3-day weekend. I've been so engrossed in what you do and share, and it's like, no one would know that. And that's amazing. You've really, what came to me was, you talk about the GPS, the great
Yeah.
of the sky. And I was like,
Mhm.
the divine really, to me, listening to you, you allowed yourself to be, a channel for this new soaring of the feminine. And by stepping in, you allowed that. It's,
Yeah, I'm sure you did the same thing in starting this podcast.
oh, everything I've done.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Where you have to, and it's
Yeah.
actually, people think, oh wow, her ego is so big. It's
Mm-mm.
actually the opposite. It's like you have to surrender to not getting attached to feeling, to self-criticism. And you have to stand in the soft vulnerability of, okay, great pussy in the sky, take me, break me, open me. I'm yours. I'm ready to take these steps.
Beautiful. Absolutely. So beautiful. We've talked so much about the pussy being the place that we're reclaiming. I love
Yeah.
what you said. I'm still coming back to, I never thought of this. You probably wrote it in the book and talked about it, but you're right. If you ask a boy or a guy, they would just say it's a penis.
Right.
There's no, I
There's
don't know
nothing.
why it clicked. Like, it made me angry, kind of
Yeah.
like, what the F? Like, why
Yeah.
don't we freaking have a name?
Yeah.
It's so indicative of the patriarchy and shame. It's what I love about you and what you're doing is this bringing back, we need that balance. And
Mm-hmm.
I can just imagine those that are listening are like, okay, great. So how do I tune in? How do I start connecting to my inner greatness, my pussy power, pleasure? Like, for some, and I got to tell you, I left a marriage. It was not terrible, but it was not right for me,
Right.
Regina. And I was dying there. And
Mm-hmm.
without going into too many details, what I can say is that it was not the right fit, and I got the intuition from my heart, my pussy, all of it spoke. And there are many that have not left those situations.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And I just like to give some wisdom where to begin. I know I know you have, I mean, there's so many different things you teach, but maybe to give some like beginning spaces where people can start to tune into pleasure, and that we're allowed to, and in fact, not only allowed to, we need to.
Yeah, we do need to. Because basically, what happens is when a woman is not living by her own power source, but, following the tracks in the grooves of that have been laid down for her by her culture or her family or other people's expectations for her, she disconnects from her desires. Like she can't even hear them.
Mm.
It's like, how like your cell phone is buried under a pile of coats at a party, and you can kind of dimly hear down the hall that something is beeping, but you can't even like dig through the pile to find your phone in your coat pocket. Like, that's how remote a woman's desires become.
Mm.
And when you're disconnected from your desire, you aren't living your truth. And that's what I think we have such incredible statistics of, like, 1 in 4 women are going to experience depression in their life. Out of those, only 1 in 5 will ever seek treatment. The instances of eating disorders and breast cancer, like, it's a health risk for a woman not to live her truth.
Mm.
And so the pathway there is for a woman to begin to connect with her desire, even if it's hard to articulate. Like, it was hard for you to articulate, the
Yeah.
marriage is okay, but it's not exactly right. But the fuel that begins to power up a woman so that she can actually hear her truth is pleasure.
Mm.
And this is tricky shit, my love, because we've been taught to feed ourselves such a paltry diet of pleasure. You
Mm.
know, uh, I'll have moms that will take my class and I'll be like, well, what do you like to eat? And she'll be like, I don't know. I know what my husband likes to eat. I know what my kids like to eat, but I haven't paid attention to what would I like? I just eat whatever everybody else has. So we learn to disconnect from our truth because we're so busy taking care of other people. So what it means is a woman has to actually become a pleasure researcher, to actually begin to connect with her joy above all other values and be super, super conscious about it. So, before this is, teaching a class called Virtual Pleasure Bootcamp. I'm going to show you something funny. Hold on.
You're listening, you got to watch this later so you can see. Oh,
Okay. So this is I'll do this every single day. I wrote my sexy Passover because it's Passover. So I started out with my foot exercises, and then I did my breath work, which is just like sexy dancing. And I had a hot fuck with my boyfriend. Then I did yoga. Then I made my matzo balls, then a team meeting, then lunch, then another dance break, spring cleaning, which is an exercise I do, then set up at the Passover table, and then flash Peter 5 times. So that
you're so awesome.
isn't that awesome? So that I'm actually building pleasure into my day, because if I don't, it won't be there.
Yeah.
The sun will set and my joy won't have been attended to,
Right.
because no one else is going to attend to it except for me.
Right.
So it's retooling a woman to begin to prioritize her joy above all other values.
Mm.
And when she does that, she sets everything right inside of herself, for her family, and for her community, because she is fed. And we've been taught to give ourselves like a diet of saltines without the salt,
Mm.
and no other nutrients in the pleasure department. But we really have to begin to reorganize and restructure so that we're building pleasure in every single day, or we are lost. We are truly without a compass, and lost. And so it's easy if you have other girlfriends to conspire with. Oh, first of all, it's easy if you read any of my books, because my books are stuffed with pleasure tips. But what are some things you did today?
Well, first of all, I was laughing because I'm like, "Ooh, I'm so flushed seeing that." And I remember part of the whole, you talk about this, is the engaging and connecting with other women in a sensual way is actually what we're missing, is that
Yeah.
connection, collaboration, community. Like, it just brought, I was like, oh, that is awesome. I'm like, I'm going to redo my day. Just, that is awesome. It's funny. I was just thinking, I'm like, I'm a little low on the pleasure. I mean, for me, I took an amazing walk listening to a book that is rocking my
Right.
world. I put on this $500 Johnny
Yeah,
West
baby.
with my power ring. And I just put, we're in home huddle. I don't like to say isolation. So I put on my makeup. I got my lighting. I got my roses. And I'm like, I'm going to book my husband tonight for another awesome time together, because we were quarantined for 2 weeks. So I'm like, but I'm going to add, like, I got to get a little more creative. Like, I love what you have there.
Yeah, there's so many countless things, and it's a great thing to collaborate with other girlfriends, because it's a way of generating turn on and fun inside of each other's lives. Like if you called a girlfriend and said, what are you going to do for yourself today? It reminds her to do something pleasurable for herself, and then she'll give you ideas and vice versa. And then suddenly the world is turned on instead of turned off.
I love that. I love this. You talked about this, and I've seen it myself. I think you're really getting to this when you tune in and turn on. It activates this like love for our sisters.
Mm-hmm.
This,
That's right.
I mean, I felt it immediately. I was like with you, I'm like, oh, I just like, want to dance and hey, like you just radiating. And I think we radiate that and we're able to me, it's how, I mean, personally, what I love about you, what you're teaching is it's how we change our world. This is the
Yeah,
feminine that's
this is it.
missing. Yes. And it starts with pleasure. And you're right. Your book is like all your books packed, packed, packed. I just love that you shared your day.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, and doesn't it seem like a new part of you is being called forward now, like a new way of thinking or a new way of being,
Yeah.
you know, and the overachieving and overworking and pushing forward as a way of life has been utterly sidelined.
Yeah.
And no matter how uncomfortable overworking was, it was a way of life.
Yeah.
And now is the time to set aside those masculine patriarchal tools that we were taught to prioritize. Because working harder and faster and better is not going to bring enlightenment. Going it alone and profit as the goal and cutting off from our emotions, that's
Yeah.
not going to take us anywhere we want to be.
Yeah.
So it's the time for that slumbering feminine genius in each of us to awaken, and for us to begin to practice and prioritize the skills and instincts that are innately ours as women, because we all thrive in pleasure and collaboration and turn on and joy. And we love vulnerability. We love connection. We love to grow through nurturing. So it's a time to build relationships and build community and build sisterhood and recognize the interconnectedness of everything and staying emotionally tuned in and plugged into our sacred power. We have the skills. We've been encouraged to set them down for the past 5,000 years of patriarchal conditioning, but it's a time for us each as women to begin to connect to that which is essentially our sacred knowledge. We were built for this, and it's time to live this truth out loud. And, you know, it's, as you say, the pathway is pleasure, it's fun, and it's a whole new paradigm. It's a whole new way we can love our way back to ourselves. So it's a spectacular time to be a woman. There's so much opportunity now that there has not been before, and a tremendous and magnificent part is it's not going to come through suffering. It's going to come through celebration, and it's going to come through connection and transparency and vulnerability and pleasure.
Pleasure is the key. Before we wrap up, I'm just calling you everything. I'm like Mama Gena now, Regena before. I just tune it in, and it's just that's what's coming up. You know, one of the last things I want to say, because you do a lot of, I loved this because for me, so I struggled with food addiction, sugar addiction to cover feelings, emotions.
Yeah.
Very hard for me. It used to be very hard to have feelings of not good enough and disappointment and sad. I really like just mask them. And I know you teach about swamping and all these ways of managing the spectrum of emotions. And it's funny because we're talking about pleasure, but I think it's important.
It's so important. You know, it's not like pussy suddenly puts a lot of glitter in the air and you sort of prance around with feathers and life is, you know, exquisite. What happens is when you begin to plug into pleasure and connect with your sensuality, the first thing that happens is all of the backlog of grief, heartbreak, betrayal, you know, any experience that in which your body and soul have been abused or hurt or damaged will come rushing forward. And that is such a good thing.
Yeah.
Because every woman is 88 keys in her piano. And we were taught just to play middle C over and over again. You know, oh, I'm fine. Oh, I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm good. I'm okay. And for a woman to begin to own her darkness, you know, because it's, and to love it and to treasure it, to like relish her insane grief or her magnificent rage or her jealousy or her anger, and to be able to embody it and experience it and have it and not stuff it away is one of the great, I mean, it's so much fun to be like emotionally alive,
Mm.
extravagantly emotionally alive. And we haven't been taught that it's all right. We've been taught that we're supposed to just be fine. And so it's one of the great gifts that women experience from taking my classes or reading my books is they start to love their anger, or to just fall into their grief and relish it in the same way Mother Nature does.
Mm.
It was pouring rain here this morning. Now the sun is out. That happened in one day.
Mm.
And it's the same thing in the emotional life of a woman. She can be pouring tears one moment and elated the next. And it's just part of a life well lived.
Oh, thank you for, I love
And,
that you eat keys. Whew, I love that.
and I teach women a practice called swamping, which is where you can actually organize a, a party for yourself, like throw on a really provocative, engaging playlist and just feel your darkness, feel your rage. And you do it by yourself or in sisterhood because it's just feels so good to feel and to give yourself the freedom to feel your truth,
Mm.
uh, and not be afraid of it.
I think just to say one last thing with that is I, not listening to my voice for so long, I ended up coming down with thyroid disease. And
Wow.
I knew it's an excellent condition now because I mean, it's been a gift I've done my whole life, really what we're talking about. But I can tell you there's no question that stuffing down and not
Mm-hmm.
healing, it got right lodged where I felt like I didn't have a voice and
Right.
shut the F down. So
That's so brilliant of you to have said yes to connecting to your voice and power and
yeah,
not treating it just purely on a medical level,
yeah.
but recognizing, oh, wow, this is the great pussy giving me an opportunity to redo and rethink and recreate who I am as a woman. Takes so much courage to do that. You're badass.
Thank you. Ooh, it brings tears to my eyes. Thank you. Yep. I just relate to what you're saying. And I know anyone listening will. And goodness, Regina, Mama Gena, like just goddess of really for you. I can't even tell you how grateful I am that the courage you had as an introvert, it's just who you stepped into. You've touched and changed so many lives. And I look at you and I'm like, let me, like, GPS, great divine source, like, let me be make an impact at whatever that looks like. And just, you've been such an inspiration. And
Oh, thank you. And you are making an impact. You're making a huge impact, and you're following your pussy and you're following your truth and you're opening doorways for so many others. And what a great way to spend your life.
thank you. Well, you're just, I'm like, sister goddess is not even the right, I feel like, just thank you for stepping into the full feminine divine goddess that has been missing for 5,000 years. You've really, I feel like you've taken her from the ancient caves and brushed her off, and she's this like shining gold, but like she's here, and you've
Mm-hmm.
really resurrected her. You've taken, what perfect timing right now, especially
Mm-hmm.
do that. And I'm going to recommend anybody and everyone. We'll have all the links, but I know you have online courses because we're doing things virtually these days.
Yes.
Books. Is there anything else to share? Your works, I mean, your books are delicious. I actually liked both reading, but I listened to it as well because you tell it so well. So I actually
Oh,
recommend.
thank you. Yeah, thank you. I publish amazing blogs every week.
Yes.
So if people go to my website, they can, and also on Instagram, I'll put up videos every week and talk about a different topic about women or sensuality or pussy or something. So it would be lovely to be in touch that way. And it's wonderful to continue to inspire one another as women. And in fact, it's so essential because you standing in your radiance
Yeah.
allows me to stand more powerfully in mine. and vice versa. And every single woman who's listening to this podcast to step more boldly and brightly into her own light just makes a bigger playground for other women to step into theirs. And we can all continue to grow exponentially together.
Amazing. Beautiful. Thank you. This was a gift to share you. And
Thank you.
thank God you listen to your pussy. That's all I can say. Never said that on air, but thank God.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much.